To the member for Bruce.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm not a member of this committee, but I've got an interest in trade policy, and last term I did spend a couple of years on the Trade and Investment Growth Committee. So I took a look at the report, and honestly, 12 months of work, this is what they come up with. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. There's a grab bag of platitudes and motherhood recommendations, but the most ridiculous thing, the astounding thing, is it reads like they haven't been in government for the last 8 years, like the Liberals haven't been in government. They've just discovered all these new problems and things that need to be fixed. It's astounding. It's almost like there's not a trade crisis. There's not still 53 ships stuck off the coast of China. Last time I spoke on trade, we thought that was part of the comeback strategy. Come back home, they don't want you. We've stuffed up the relationship so badly they don't want the ships. They're still there. International education smashed. Our fourth largest export sector, worth more than 240,000 jobs in this country. There's more jobs from international education than there are from the mining sector or the agriculture sector. What industry support has international ed had? Zero. Last week we heard $1.2 billion of cheap flights to marginal seats to support bits and pieces of the tourism industry, if they're lucky enough to be in marginal seats. Not a dollar for the international ed sector. Just platitudes in this report. But look, the favourite bit, anyone speaking on this had run out of time to talk about the good bits. But let's just have a look at diversification. They've made a great new discovery, the government, in their 8th year. They've discovered that we're a bit dependent on China, our largest trading partner. The previous speakers talked about, oh, COVID. It was all revealed because of COVID. What nonsense. Since the government came to office, our dependence on China for trade has increased. That's nothing to do with COVID. 26% of our trade was with China when this government was elected. It's now 35%. 35%, and they've discovered a new problem. Of course, we've got the member for Dawson. Maybe his strategy to deal with diversification is to do everything he can to talk down and insult our major trading partner. You know, he doesn't talk on his website. The inquiry title here is Pivot, Diversifying Australia's Trade and Investment Growth Profile. He's got a whole website calling it the China Inquiry. Enough is enough. That's his strategy for diversification. Talk down our biggest trading partner and then the others might kind of look a bit even as the country gets poorer. It is true we're facing a serious and growing trade crisis with China, but the focus on this crisis is obscuring, and the current, I should say the current short-term boost in iron ore exports, obscures the reality that trade performance under the Liberals has been patchy at best and has stagnated or gone backwards on key metrics in their 8th year. Export diversification, in simple terms, is don't put all your eggs in one basket, and like I said, it's become more concentrated. But the latest global data, the International Monetary Fund's Export Diversification Index, they don't like hearing about data and facts, confuses the spin and the marketing if you talk about data and facts, showed that Australia's export diversity is now ranked at 84th globally. That's a level that was last seen in this country in the 1960s. They've been in government for 8 years and they've just discovered there's a problem. But let's have another look. Oh, actually, no, this is a good dot point, isn't it? Enhanced diplomatic capability to identify and secure new supply chains and markets. Well, that's terrific. That would mean not cutting DFAT. The government cut another 6 diplomats this year, including 2 from Papua New Guinea. I mean, I agree with the member for Dawson's dot point there, but what they've been doing in every year of government is cutting our diplomatic capability. It's like Fantasy Island. It's another universe. I mean, Enid Blyton might have been the ghostwriter of this report. But then we get to recommendation 2. The government, so the committee thinks, should create greater trade opportunities for Australian exporters. Well, that sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? Good on you, government. But then we get to the first dot point. We're going to deliver on our India economic strategy. Well, that's a terrific idea. It cost you $1.5 million back 3 years ago in 2018, commissioned from Peter Varghese, the former Secretary of the Foreign Affairs Department. Guess how many recommendations the government's implemented 3 years on of this report? Any bets?
Low.
1 out of 20. The only thing they've done is open a new office in Calcutta. The other 20 recommendations, the serious, meaningful ones, they've done nothing on. The Prime Minister announced this with great fanfare, loves the announcement, but hasn't actually delivered. But it's good that the member for Dawson's saying we should implement a report we got 3 years ago. That'll fix the problem. Also says we should encourage people to make greater use of free trade agreements and eliminate non-tariff barriers. Well, that's a good idea, isn't it? But there's no honest auditing of the outcomes of these free trade agreements. It was Andrew Robb who started it. They went, oh, we don't have an economic policy. Let's do free trade agreements everywhere we can. Anyone who knows about trade theory would tell you that you want global agreements, and if you can't get global agreements, you want regional agreements, and only then, sometimes, maybe, do you go to bilateral free trade agreements, because trade economic theory shows they will actually often confuse the market and make things more complex and raise costs. But the government's scared to undertake a proper analysis of the impact of their free trade agreements. They just want to keep announcing them. They never go back and look whether they've achieved anything, whether they've grown or harmed the economy. They just want to announce new ones. But non-tariff barriers, that's not a new issue. If you talk to any of the businesses in my electorate, in the great Dandenong manufacturing precinct, they'll tell you it's not free trade agreements they want. Tariffs are not the issue in the vast majority of markets. It's the non-tariff barriers. It's the cultural issues, the standards, the dodgy checks at the borders. This takes hard work and it takes agency capability, and yet they keep cutting the departments that are supposed to do this work. It's just a nonsense. Oh, then we get recommendation 4. This is terrific. The Australian government should increase its encouragement of key Asian languages and cultures for students to create better understanding and Asia capability for future generations. Well, it's good that we understand that flying to and from Manila all the time is not actually increasing the nation's aggregate Asia capability. That's a good start. But the hypocrisy is profound. This was the government that 8 years ago scrapped the Rudd-Gillard's government's initiatives that have been doing this very work for those 6 years. The Rudd-Gillard government, the former Labor government, had the National Asian Languages and Studies in Schools program. They had the Becoming Asia Literate grants to schools, which actually did this work, and this was the government that scrapped it. The Prime Minister's been in the Cabinet for all of those 8 years. Now we've got government muppets saying, oh, it's a good idea that we should encourage people in future generations to learn Asian languages. It is a good idea. But there's a say-do gap. We say it's a good idea, but all we do is cut the funding and not act on the reports and the recommendations. Why should any Australian believe anything's going to be different because of these nice platitudes and words? Oh, this is a good one too. We think we should work with the states and territories and the university sector to investigate new options to increase domestic funding for universities and university research. Well, that might be like we could have a raffle. We could start having fundraisers for universities, because this is the government that year after year has done everything, budget after budget, to cut and try and cut billions of dollars from university funding, and now they're saying we need to go and do more sources. I mean, I heard the previous speaker, you know, she said it with a straight face that, well, there's been an over-reliance on international students. Well, that's because the Prime Minister and the Treasurer 2 years ago were out there telling the universities, well, go and recruit more international students, as they took another $1.1 billion out of the university funding. I mean, what hypocrisy. We cut the university funding, then we say you're too reliant, go and recruit international students, then we say you're too reliant on international students, what have you been doing, silly universities? Go and find some other money. I mean, we could have a cake bake for the universities. That might be what he means. Who knows what he means there? I mean, maybe he means do the only other thing the government's done, which is jack up student fees. This is a government that in 4 years we saw student debt rise per average by student by 36.7%. Their only university funding policy so far has been cut the public funding and load the debt onto students and make the next generation pay. Maybe that's what they mean. I mean, we've got the sovereign manufacturing capability. They say capacity, I think they probably mean capability, but, you know, this is a member for Dawson. But that's not a bad idea either, representing an electorate where manufacturing's still the largest single biggest employment sector. But maybe they could have not chased the car industry out of Australia. That would have been a good idea. Then we'd have a whole industry there with modern technology and a supply chain. But no, they did that. Oh, this is good too. We're going to provide incentives to stimulate the growth of the industries of tomorrow, including the video game development industry. Well, I actually think that's a good idea. I support the video game development industry.
Is that a new industry?
It's not a new industry, and indeed, well, you may ask, Member for Solomon, the Rudd and Gillard government had a fund and a policy and an industry support plan for the video game development industry, which could be worth a lot more to this country, and it's actually a critical enabler of defence technologies and education and mining and agriculture and all sorts of things. But guess what? Tony Abbott and this Liberal government cut all that support. So, the Port of Darwin, I mean, other people have spoken about the Port of Darwin. What a good idea, buy back the Port of Darwin. This was the government that presided over the lease. You don't know whether to laugh or cry at this government. Why should anyone believe a single word of this report when you have a look at the 8 years of failure?